Members, and call the May 22nd, 2018 school board meeting to order. Whether you are in attendance here tonight or watching from another location, my colleagues and I are pleased you took the time to join us. We appreciate and applaud your commitment to partnering with us in support of our schools, our students, our staff, and our community. And while the board and Brevard Public Schools staff members are fully committed to doing our very best to ensure excellence in Brevard Public Schools, we know that our success depends heavily on an engaged and committed community to work alongside us and help us to continually improve. Thank you for being active participants in the process, and thank you for a great school year. Pam, roll call, please.
Mrs. Belford?
Present.
Mr. Craig?
Present.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Present.
Mr. Susan?
Present.
And Mr. Ziegler?
Here.
This evening, Matt Reed, Assistant Superintendent of Government and Community Relations, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I'd like to stand with tradition and offer my fellow board members and Dr. Blackburn the opportunity to recognize staff, students, or community members. Mr. Ziegler, I'll start with you.
Well, obviously, we've had our graduations this past weekend, which is probably the best part of the job. But I want to congratulate Mark Elliott on his retirement and attending his last graduation at Satellite. And thank you, Mark, for the experience of an entire graduation in the rain. Never done that one before. That's all I have.
Ms. Belford?
Also would like to thank all of those schools that gave me the opportunity to join them for the awesomest day of the year. Got to attend Titusville High School, Astronaut High School, Space Coast Junior Senior High School graduation, Edgewood last evening, and then I also had the opportunity to join Brevard Virtual, which is, if you have not been to one of the Brevard Virtual graduations, they're always really neat because it's a small group, and so they actually do a little bio in each of the graduates, and it's a great experience. So many thanks to all of those schools for letting me join them, and congratulations to our class of 2018. They're an awesome group.
Thank you. Ms. Deskovich?
I just have the graduations also, so congratulations to our graduates and for all those that put on the graduations. A lot of work goes into them. The teachers put a lot of time and effort. The senior sponsor has put, at minimum a year's worth of work into getting the kids to that date. That Satellite graduation literally was in the pouring rain, so that was that was quite an experience. But West Shore, Palm Bay High, they do a really great job of putting them together too. So thanks to all the hard work, and congratulations to the graduates.
Mr. Susan?
Well, I had the honor of also going to O'Galley, Vieira, and Rockledge's graduation. Rockledge's was about 91 degrees, and the parents only got 2 tickets. So I think there's a real desperate need for us to look into other facilities that we may be able to open up for some of those in the event that this happens at the last minute. The other thing I did was I also went to Manatee, Ralph Williams, Sable, Croton, and Suntree's 6th grade and 5th grade graduations. That was good. We gave out a Rotarian Award for those kids that were public service, commitment for their public service. I did want to say that tonight, Vieira's softball team will be playing for the state championship semifinal, and if they win, then they play for the championship tomorrow, which I think right now is our only state championship team besides Merritt Island Baseball that was playing. I'm not sure if they're still in it, but still, as we graduate, we've got seniors still playing sports going through. And then I would be remiss if I had Mr. Owens in the stands and I didn't see it. Spring football games are tonight and tomorrow night, and if you guys don't know, that's where our football programs take a spring season and actually play a game at the end of about 3 to 4 weeks of training. Again, this was one of those things where I said that it's the only sport that we have a second season for that the coaches don't have a stipend for. But I wanted to also say, if you guys get an opportunity, tonight and tomorrow night. Your teams may be playing at home. And I did want to say thank you to Janice Schultz for that presentation on career and technical. Many of the people inside of our stands in this room have been screaming that we do career and technical programs for our kids and that we all need to learn the trades. And we heard you. And the programs that Janice Schultz just showed us in the workshop and what we're doing here and what we've been doing for a very long time is amazing. And I hope the opportunity presents itself for us for the next year to show you guys just that. And with that, I think I'm good.
Dr. Blackburn?
I'll stay within the theme of graduations. I first want to recognize the BASA organization. I see Gary Schifrin out there. Mr. Ziegler, you and I attended their May 9th scholarship dinner where they awarded financial scholarships to many of our graduates. The following evening, keeping with the graduation theme, I had a chance to attend the Lead Brevard graduation where several of our members in the back there, Mrs. Klein, Dr. Thetty, and Mrs. Archer, were graduates of this year's Lead Brevard class. So they're in the running of being at least the second best Lead Brevard class, so they can compete with all the other classes out there. And of course, the absolute highlight of this work is getting to stand on stage and shake hands of young men and young women after they receive that diploma and welcome them out into the bill-paying, tax-paying world. It's really the highlight of the entire job. And that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Mr. Susan, you brought up a great thing. I was going to mention the same thing, but I just wanted to add my thanks to Janice Schultz and the CTE presentation. The stuff that we have going on, while we all knew that there were robust programs across the district, I don't think any of us realized just how intense the programs are and the opportunities our students have, and Janice Schultz is responsible for all of that and does an amazing work. So thank you very much to her and for all that she's doing for our students. And with that, brings us to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
Mr. Craig and members of the board, on this evening's agenda, we have administrative staff recommendations, 1 recognition, 19 consent items, 4 action items, and 1 information item. You also have the yellow supplemental agenda, which are changes made to the agenda since being released to the public. Item A7 on administrative staff recommendations was revised. Revisions were also made to item F15 on reappointment nominations of annual contract teachers for 2018-2019, and item F16 on administrative and professional reappointment nominations for 2018-2019. And brief correction, I mentioned there will be 19 consent items. There's going to be 18 consent items. I'll explain to you why in just a moment. Item F19 on termination of instructional employee was revised as well. Item F27 on job description, specialist school safety and security was an addition and also had subsequent revisions. Action item G31 on employee grievance was also an addition. And item on Gardendale North Area Bands Award of Quote was deleted from this agenda. Also, we will be deleting the instructional employee termination.
And I believe that is item F19, Pam. So, Board, if you can delete F19 from your consent. And with all of that, what are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Deskovich, seconded by Mr. Susan. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn, would you please let us know about the administrative staff recommendations?
Absolutely. Mr. Craig and members of the board, there are 9 persons on this agenda item for the board to consider.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Deskovich. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. coming up, Pam? We're having a technical, so we'll take a voice vote. All in favor, say, oh, no, I'm sorry, it is there now. There we go. Motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn.
Before I announce, I need to confess to the board, I get an opportunity, a very rare opportunity, to have a great deal of fun during principal interviews, all at the expense of the candidates, but the ones who made it through are here this evening and been looking forward several weeks to congratulate many of them. So first, please join me in congratulating Mr. James Raymer III on his reclassification and transfer from the position of assistant principal at Delora Middle School to the position of principal at Merritt Island High School.
Thank you to the board and Dr. Blackburn and the interview committee for their belief that I'm the right person to serve as the principal at Merritt Island High School. With me tonight, I have current Delora principal, Mr. Bobby Pruitt, soon to be Satellite High School principal. I'd like to thank him for his continued mentorship and guidance over the past few years and really shown me how to be a real strong and well-versed administrator. Mr. Jim Wilcoxon, retired principal, BPS Schools and Melbourne High School for my first administrative position, and has been instrumental in his support as I've continued through my administrative career, been there with me every step of the way, so thank you so much for your continued support. And my wife, Lindsay, who is the rock and the one that deals with the late nights and the early mornings, and her continued belief and support me throughout this journey has been amazing. So thank you so much. I love you, and I appreciate everything.
Mrs. Raymer, I'm sure that now that he's not working for Mr. Pruitt, you should see a whole lot more of him. Next up, congratulations to Mr. Ronald Shaw on his reclassification and transfer from the position of assistant principal at Cocoa Beach Junior Senior High School to the position of principal at Southwest Middle School.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. I'm truly humbled and appreciative of this awesome opportunity to be the instructional leader / shepherd of Southwest Middle School coming up this summer, July the 2nd. With me tonight, I have my mother, wave mama, my elder brother, Gregory Shaw, my lovely wife of 21 years, Diane, friends. I have 4 former bosses of mine. My first boss was Miss Joan Sparks, Sherry Tomlinson, Tony Hines, and Vicki Hickey. And family friends, Barbara and Kenneth Moore. Just truly blessed for the opportunity. Thank you.
Next up, congratulations also go out to Mr. Jeremy LeBron James. No, the James isn't part of it, it's just what I called him in the interview. So I'll start all over again. Congratulations go out to Mr. Jeremy LeBron on his reclassification and transfer from the position of assistant principal at Merritt Island High School to the position of principal at Delora Middle School.
I just want to thank the board and Dr. Blackburn for believing in me and trusting me with one of your babies, one of your schools. I'll take good care of her. I also want to thank my wife, Lauren. She does the real hard work at home, taking care of our 2-year-old Parker and our 5-year-old daughter Riley. So she really keeps the house in order for us as a family and allows me to pursue my career. I also want to thank Mr. Todd Shearer. He gave me a lot of leadership opportunities as a teacher to help me grow and be prepared. And then Molly Vega for showing me what true leadership looks like over these last 4 years and how to be an instructional leader and do what's best for faculty, teachers, community, and ultimately for students. And Mr. Joe Flora, principal at Madison, we kind of went through the curriculum ranks together. Brad Merrill, they've shown me a lot of support in helping me reach my goal. And I look forward to continuing all the great traditions that have been built at Delora. And being a Scotty alumni myself, I'm happy to be back in my hometown and leading the school. Thank you.
Congratulations are in order to Catherine Murphy on her reclassification and transfer from the position of Assistant Principal 10-month at Longleaf Elementary School to the position of Principal at Fairglen Elementary School.
I want to thank the board and Dr. Blackburn for this amazing opportunity. I want to thank my family, who I have a lot of members here. Without them, I definitely would not be here today. I want to thank all of the amazing leaders that I have been blessed to work with in Brevard Public Schools. They've helped me really shape my vision for who I want to be as a leader. I want to thank Dr. Bias for being here today and all of my Longleaf staff. I will miss you greatly. Those were great memories. I want to thank Dr. Dunkel for being here tonight and bringing all of these Fairglen people with him. I appreciate your support, and I look forward to the adventures that lie ahead. Thank you.
Fairglen staff, you came here tonight just to make sure he was leaving, didn't you? I don't blame you. Congratulations are in order to Ms. Ashley Toll on her reclassification and transfer from the position of Assistant Principal at Meadow Lane Intermediate School to the position of Principal at John F. Turner Elementary.
Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Blackburn and the board for this opportunity to serve as the principal at Turner Elementary in Brevard County. I would also like to thank Mrs. Klein for her continued guidance and support over the last several years. I know she's always been in my corner, and I truly appreciate everything she's done for me. I've been blessed to work at two amazing schools here in Brevard County as an administrator, Endeavor and Meadow Lane Intermediate, and those schools and their support have truly shaped myself as a leader. I want to thank Rashad Wilson for his leadership and encouragement and his continued support and friendship. My mentor, Nell Marshall, for being my mentor through this process and her confidence in me. Also, Adrienne Schwab for her guidance, support, leadership, and friendship. She has pushed me out of my comfort zones and helped me to become the confident leader I am today. I brought my husband, my parents, 2 out of 3 of my children, and some of my friends from Meadow Lane to be here with me tonight. And I truly thank all of you for your love and support, because I could not do it without you. And I'm so thankful that my new Turner family came out to support me tonight. It means the world, and I am so excited to be coming to you, and I look forward to all of our adventures ahead. Thank you.
And lastly, we move on to congratulate Mr. Wesley Harold on his reclassification from the position of interim principal to principal at Ralph Williams Elementary School.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn and members of the board, Ms. Klein and her wonderful team, and my supervisor, Marilyn Sylvester. So they've been a great support throughout the year, and it's kind of rare to not have to move offices while you're moving positions, so I'm thankful for that opportunity. But just the belief that in October to take an AP and expect that they're able to be able to take the reins and lead, as you said, one of the babies of our county. So I enjoyed that opportunity, and thank you for your belief and continued awesome work at Ralph Williams Elementary. I do have with me my amazing wife and 3 daughters. They're very understanding and they love learning as well. My wife's a teacher, so she gets it. But lots of time spent with our Crane family as well, so I appreciate their time and effort, as well as my parents, always there in my corner and kind of shaped me in who I've become. And Miss Back is with me tonight. She's my right hand and my left hand and everything else, so I couldn't do anything without her, and I appreciate her support. And it all started with Terry Lee taking a chance on a swim coach. So I really appreciate that at Enterprise Elementary, and Ellie Lee for telling me you should try this leadership thing that might work out for you. So thank you. I don't think Ellie's in attendance tonight, but I appreciate that. And Mr. Reed has done an excellent job of providing opportunities for me to learn and grow as a leader, and look forward to great things to come. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw, new principal of Southwest, I'm told in your pastime you are a pastor, correct? So you'll add all of the fellow new appointees to the prayer list this Sunday, correct? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Will you please tell us about the recognition item?
Item B8 is to have the League of Women Voters of the Space Coast recognize 2 of our schools for projects submitted to the League's Recycling Awards program. Marcia Booth, coordinator of the recycling program, will present the awards and make the introductions. Ms. Booth.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. The League is honored for having the opportunity again to present awards at the school board meeting, to recognize and the work and the effort of the schools, Brevard schools. Thank you, Mr. Ziegler, Linda Gibson, Ann Everly, Joseph Montemorno, Charles McMahon, Bruce Lindsay, and Fran Baer for your support on these, with this year's award program. Just a brief history of the program. So since 1997, the League of Women Voters of the Space Coast, in cooperation with Brevard Public Schools, through its Recycling Awards program, has presented Brevard schools with a challenge. Have students create ways to further implement recycling and to educate others on the importance of recycling to our environment, with the goal of helping instill in our youngsters and an appreciation for the environment and the need to conserve our precious natural resources. The award recognizes schools whose projects best reflect their knowledge about and their experience with recycling. 5 volunteer judges helped select this year's awardee. From Brevard County Solid Waste Management Department, it was Andrea Bolito. Brevard Public Schools, Ann Everly and Joseph Montemorno. And from our league, members Susan Little and Dina Deemer. Thank you for all your help. I would like also to thank the schools that participated in the program this year. We had a total of 14 applications received and 8 entries submitted. We very much appreciate your efforts in learning and practicing recycling and your participation in our program every year. I would like to thank Suntree Elementary School for their project that received honorable mention this year. So now, I would like to invite Chairperson Mr. Craig and Dr. Blackburn to help me present the award. So the elementary school selected to receive the award this year was Lewis Carroll Elementary School. Principal. Principal Ms. Bourne, and project leader Ms. Leslie Lyons. And we have one student here that represents the class, the 5th grade class of the gifted program. They created a project entitled Recycling Rush. It was a PowerPoint presentation, and I would like to present.
Thank you for sharing that. And as our new principals and their entourages depart, congratulations and best of luck over the next summer and getting ready for next year already. At this time, we are at public comments. School Board Policy 0169.1 limits public comments to 30 minutes during the first portion of the meeting, in which the public is invited to participate and provide public comment. The policy further provides that this time may be extended by a vote of the board. Tonight, though, we have exactly 10 speakers signed up, which puts us right at 30 minutes, so no motion is necessary. So, from our policy, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. We have a clock in front of me, that nice high-speed one to help you keep track of your time. When it gets down there to about 5 seconds, you'll start hearing a buzzer, and then I'll be asking you to wrap up your comments at that time. Always keep in mind that reasonable decorum is expected at all times. Your statements should be directed to the board chairman, myself. The chairman may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when time is up. Personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Should an individual not observe proper etiquette, the chairman may request the individual leave the meeting. Let's all encourage an environment appropriate for our children who may be present or who are watching from home unless they have an exam tomorrow morning, like mine. Let's begin with the first 3 speakers. Please, before speaking, state your name and if you're representing any organization and the topic you will be addressing. The first 3 are Daniel Batchelder, Boris Traganas, and Carol Jewell.
Here we go again. Right. Good evening. My name is Daniel Batchelder. I'm here as a parent. As demonstrated by your own voting at the last meeting, STOMP isn't good enough, and neither are Level 1 or Level 2 security specialists. We all agree that the best possible safety measures for our children are required, but approving amateurs to roam school halls with deadly weapons is asking for trouble. Even after 176 hours of training, you are still an amateur. Therefore, please drop the Level 1 and 2 positions and only consider the Level 3 specialists. Sadly, even Level 3s will be inadequate. If a shooter has made it into a school, no matter who else is armed, we've already lost. At Santa Fe High School, there were 2 SROs. 1 was shot. The response time from local law enforcement was 4 minutes, and there was no mental health history. 10 lives were still lost. But remember, that 1 loss is too many. This type of tragedy is becoming normalized. This is neither normal nor the mark of a civilized society, so often claiming to be the global moral authority. Before becoming a United States citizen, I served in the British Army. I received years of instruction on multiple weapons and how to react when under fire. Even with rigorous training, reaction under fire is why armed school personnel are ineffective. You cannot help anyone if you are dead, and so the first reaction under fire must be to move quickly, hit the floor, and find cover. The movies have us think that we can react by standing still, drawing a weapon, and accurately returning fire. But active situations are nothing like the range and nothing like the Wild West. Standing still, even when armed, makes the good guy a victim, and a victim doesn't stop the bad guy with a gun. There is little difference in the skills of Level 1 and 2 specialists over STOMP candidates. And last meeting, most of you already recognized the fallacies of STOMP. Therefore, dropping Level 1 and 2 is the same decision as you have already made, and Agenda Item 27 should either be tabled or voted down. Levels 1 and 2 will be too amateur to prevent a shooting and will likely cause negligent deaths and injuries. To leave the security specialist qualifications as they are is to use a bait-and-switch tactic to slither STOMP into our schools under the dark cloak of compromise. Finally, let's recognize our enemy. They are not students roaming the school halls with deadly firearms, but elected officials too cowardly to enact any meaningful legislation to prevent firearm negligence in the first place. I think it's the responsibility of the board to pressure our other elected officials to make the 3-day waiting period, age restrictions, and the bump stock ban the beginning of solving this uniquely American tragedy, and not the end. We are here to support you all as we finally make progress on preventing firearm negligence. And my recommendation is to actually use former law enforcement SRO training with teacher pay on the teacher calendar so that we've got $40,000 per year per school, an enhanced Level 3, so basically a 10-month SRO. That's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Paris Traganos, followed by Carol Jewell and Joseph Roach.
Good Good evening. My name is Paris Traganos. I live in the Atlantic, and I'm a guardian at Lightham. During this past fiscal year, Brevard County was blindsided by federal legislation that has cost this county already several $100,000, and next year will surely surpass $500,000. The government now requires foster, homeless, and at-home children to be driven to the school that he or she initially was enrolled in at the beginning of the year until the end of the year, even if the domiciles change. This national initiative has not been provided funding for this mandate. Here in Brevard, this transportation issue involves several departments with different charters and different funding sources and crosses boundaries. It has blown up some budgets and leaving others with unexpected deficits. As yet, no department has full responsibility for solving this dilemma. I have a potential solution that I've run by several department heads and mid-level managers that has gained a level of support. It includes volunteers. As a former executive and consultant, a problem like this within a company would be worked on by a cross-functional team comprised of members from various departments that had a piece of the problem, but not having the charter to fix it themselves. Solutions would be provided by the team, and someone would be assigned to fix it. It's a little different here in the county. A hired recruiter would help staff volunteers to drive vans provided by the school transportation department to fulfill the needs until school buses could be rerouted to meet the requirements, usually a 10-day process because of the other students involved. The only consistent thing these children have in common is their school. Missing many days while these arrangements can be made adds additional stress and potential of school failure. Remember, a child who repeats a grade costs an extra $7,200 at a minimum. The target date to go operational would be August 10th, the first day of the new school year. These volunteers would be trained by the school district transportation department in July and vetted by the school district transportation security department. Unlike school bus drivers, they would not be required to qualify for the CDL licensing. We need this funding for this recruiter now to start saving money for next year's budget. This transportation issue is national and is not going to go away, and this solution could be sustainable. If there's any time left, I'd like to acknowledge the departments I've spoken to, several members of the school board, the director of school transportation and his direct reports, the executive director of Family Allies, who provide the case managers currently acting as taxi drivers, Carol Jewell, who's also here, who heads up the Guardian ad Litem program in Brevard, and Jim Carlson, acting CEO of Brevard Family Partners, which provides multiple services to the county.
Thank you, sir. Carol Jewell, Joseph Roach, and Dan Bennett.
Hello, my name's Carol Jewell, and I'm the Program Director for Brevard County Guardian ad Litem program. I'm speaking today in support of the proposed volunteer driver program to assist children who are homeless or have been removed from their homes to remain in their school of origin in requirement with the ESSA legislation. Research shows that children who change schools frequently make less academic progress than their peers and fall further behind with each school change, resulting in low test scores, poor academic outcomes, and higher dropout rates. Additionally, instability makes it difficult for children to cultivate supportive relationships with teachers and peers. Children remaining in their school of origin, which is determined through a best interest staffing, is undeniably beneficial to their emotional well-being. However, we are here to discuss the financial burden that is placed on dependency case managers and local education agencies. We're aware the financial burden is straining budgets for both agencies and believe using volunteer drivers is a viable answer. Family Allies, our local child welfare agency, has incurred significant additional costs since October 2017 in mileage and wages alone. At this time, they have not factored in turnover costs, in which the new transportation requirement is an identifiable factor. To be clear, it's not only the costs associated with dependency case managers having to transport children to and from an out-of-area school, it's a lost time which could have been used to help families reunite. Time taken away that could assist a parent who is struggling to overcome addiction issues or a family that needs mental health treatment so their children can safely return to their homes. This keeps children in foster care longer, even results in families never being reunited. So there's an emotional cost to our children as well. Volunteer drivers are not a new concept. There are already programs in Brevard County that support our elder and veteran population with volunteer drivers. Aging Matters program, Transserves, and Vets Driving Vets has been in operation for over 5 years. The American Cancer Society's program, Road to Recovery, has been in operation for over 20 years in Brevard County. With volunteer drivers, Brevard County will be able to transport children in foster care to their school of origin while freeing up dependency case managers to help families. So please vote to support the volunteer driver program. With Family Allies, Brevard Public School Transportation, and school board officials working together, this program can become a model for other areas struggling with challenges of transporting our vulnerable population. The Guardian Ad Litem program in Brevard County has more than 200 active volunteers, and they are the most dedicated, passionate, and reliable citizens of Brevard County. Volunteers are an invaluable resource for our community and truly make a difference. The proposal for a volunteer driver program is an extremely workable, sustainable, and cost-effective solution for transporting homeless children and those in foster care to their school of origin. Trust me, the volunteers will not disappoint you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And it sounds like you both have already talked to Mr. Creech. Is that not true? You have? Okay. One other person, and our COO is not here, but oh, she knows. Miss Theddy, Dr. Theddy already knows. Okay. Well, of course, you're all on top of it. So thank you very, very much, and thank you for your presentations and bringing a solution forward. And I look forward to the team working together with you. Joseph Roach, Dan Bennett, and Connie Rook.
Good evening. Joseph Roach, teacher at Merritt Island High School, class of '86, go Mustangs, addressing as myself. I tell my students that two of the most important words that can be said are thank you. And I want to take the opportunity to do that tonight. On April 18th of 2016, I wasn't at school at 8:45 in the morning. They knew something was wrong. If Mr. Roach wasn't there, they tried to find me. They found me at a restaurant across the street from school. I was suffering a medical emergency. They sent Deputy Mike Williams, our school resource officer, to find me. And he quickly identified what was wrong with me and helped me get the medical attention I needed. The school resource officers are under a lot of fire, a lot of issues going on. The Brevard County sheriffs, they don't get enough thank yous for what they do. And Deputy Mike was my guardian angel that morning, along with other teachers and front office staff that helped me through. I found out today that Deputy Mike is most likely retiring very soon. And while I tell him just about every day, thank you, Mike, he says, Joe, guy upstairs. I said, no, it was you. And so I'd like to publicly thank Deputy Mike Williams in the Brevard County Schools Sheriff's Office for what they did and what they do at our schools. I missed 6 weeks of school at the end of the year. I was very fortunate to be back on the first day of school with doctor's permission and resume teaching. It was the drive to get back into the classroom that drove me. That day, there was a young man named Tyler Skull who was substituting at Merritt Island High School. They put him in my classroom. He was a former student, and he took over my classes as if I had never been there, reviewing for the AP exams, working with my student government officers, and saw the year to a very successful conclusion. He has been at Merritt Island for the last 2 years, working, teaching, enjoying it, and helping me in the Student Government Association. I would like to say thank you to him publicly, as I do every day when he's in my classroom, for what he did for me and what he did for Merritt Island High School. But I'd also like to thank you, the school board. Now, this happened 2 years ago, but a lot of work that you did or your predecessors into the insurance information that goes on and the policies that we have doesn't get a lot of publicity, but due to what happened to me, I want to say thank you because it was Cadillac. It really was good. It helped me, and it has helped to get me back to where I am. So I'd like to thank you for what you did. So, thank you to Deputy Mike. Thank you to Tyler Skull. Thank you to Mary Fredericks, Sheila Beal, Michelle Williams, Kathy Adams, the teachers at Merritt Island High School, and my students. As we say at Merritt Island, once a Mustang, always a Mustang. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dan Bennett, Connie Rook, and Melissa DeFrancisco.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's tough to follow that. It was inspirational, but at least I'm giving good news tonight and not mad at y'all. To give credit where credit is due. Soon on the agenda, when this is done, you're going to take up the matter of annual contract teacher reappointments. And we know the legislature threw a couple curveballs at us. Well, they started throwing curveballs a couple years ago, and they threw another one in the spring. And we actually were trying to figure out how to get done what we had to get done, but we did it. We ended up at impasse. It was ugly a few months ago, but we came up with a system. And tonight, I'm proud, and well, I too am thankful that we're going to get just about every single annual contract teacher that is deserving, because of their evaluation, reappointed before the last day of school. And that is remarkable. I know the HR staff has been scrambling, principals have been scrambling. I know Rivers regrets that I ever got his direct extension, but we pretty much got it all done before the last day of school. And we're a rarity in the state of Florida. Right now, there are thousands of annual contract teachers across the state that do not know where they'll be next year, if they'll even have a job. So good for you, good for HR, and I'm glad that we were able to work together to get that done. With that said, I have a chore for you. Somewhere I mentioned in there that was the legislature that created that mess on annual contract reappointment. Well, we have them to thank for a funding crisis as well. And there's been some back and forths in the paper, not only locally but across the state. Did they give us 47 cents per student? Did they give us $100 per student? In reality, they created some more things that we have to fund, and then they didn't give us enough money for the things we have to fund. In true Tallahassee fashion, we have some more categoricals, including security, including transportation, things that they are not filling. So even the 47 cents per student or $100, however you look at it, we don't have enough money for next year. And I've been at this podium before urging you to go to the local voters to consider increasing funding for our schools. And I would still urge you to consider that. I would still urge you to do that. But eyes on Tallahassee, there's been enough signatures collected that the legislature could come back to a special session. They needed so many senators and House representatives to sign a petition to bring it to a vote. It would take a 3/5 vote of the Florida legislature to come to a special session, and that 3/5 vote would have to happen by Thursday, the way they worded this petition. So I would urge each of you to reach out and use the influence you have with your local delegation. It can be contentious. It can be a fine mess because they think they've done what they need to do to properly fund schools. Well, you all are in a position where you could tell them that, no, they have not done what they need to properly fund education. At least bring it to a discussion. So I would urge you either this evening or tomorrow, contact the members of the legislature. Teachers are doing it as well. Urge them to go back to a special session and fund education properly in Florida. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Connie Rook, Melissa DeFrancisco, and Adrian Trent.
Good evening. My name is Connie Rook. We are your engaged in committee community. I love the entry that we start our meetings with. We are also mothers and fathers and grandparents, teachers, students, and we are members of Moms Demand Action. We are accountants, we're engineers, we're law enforcement, we're business owners, we're doctors, we're military, and we are university professors. And for every person that's in this room, there's 20 more of them watching you on this camera right now. And we add new members every single day. And we have something very much in common with all of you. We want a great education for the children in Brevard, and we want them to be safe. So we're on the same team. And we are here. We've been here since the tragedy in Parkland, And tonight, we wear ribbons for Santa Fe High School, and we're not going anywhere. We have rearranged our summer schedule around your meetings, and we worry. No offense, but there are other things that I would rather worry about. Travel arrangements for 3 sports tournaments this summer. I need to get my kids to summer camp. I haven't even planned a summer vacation. If you know me, that's a tragedy. But I'm here. And we worry, and we have concerns. And our biggest concern is the misguided plan to arm minimally trained art volunteer staff. You have to know that we do not want to see that happen for so many, many reasons. And you've heard us. I mean, the very first meeting, there was 50 of us. I was explaining those reasons to you. It's a horrible option to ensure the safety of our students. Yet, at the last meeting, you kicked the can down the road, and you started a shell game by postponing indefinitely the vote to implement STOMP. It was a really rotten thing to do. So we're here again, and we're not leaving. Please do the right thing. Please be smart. Please bring it to vote, and opt out of STOMP to arm volunteers. Thank you.
Melissa DeFrancesco, Adrian Trent, Vanessa Skipper.
My name is Melissa DeFrancesco. I'm the lead for Moms Demand Action. We're here once again after a mass school shooting in Texas, and our hearts break for those who were killed and who were injured. Once again, a student walked into a school with the intention of harming others. We applaud the efforts of the well-trained school resource officers who encountered the shooter in an effort to save the students, faculty, and staff. But once again, the gunman was already on the campus. At some point, we must focus the conversation on common sense approaches to keep the weapons out of our schools. For months, we have talked about how many guns to put in our Brevard County schools. It's time to talk about stopping kids from getting guns. It's time to talk about stopping the guns from coming inside schools in the first place. We need to take the fight outside our schools and not wait until it comes into our children's classrooms. That means taking immediate action to implement support and education programs for our students, especially those who are struggling or just need someone to listen. Utilize the funding by the legislature for mental health services. Let our counselors be counselors instead of test proctors, and utilize our community members and groups who are willing and able to help. Groups like Counselors for Change. Implement programs and training through the Crisis Prevention Institute. Support the Be Smart program, a conversation about kids, guns, and safety provided by Moms Demand Action. Let's find out how to implement red flag laws at the school level. Push to make sure the security improvements in progress are completed by the beginning of the school year. Install metal detectors or other measures in all schools to help keep weapons off campuses. Turn them away at the door. Work the problem and find a solution. For months, the school board heard from parents and concerned citizens opposed to arming volunteer school staff. At the last meeting, you voted for SROs with school security specialists at locations that won't yet have our SROs provided. However, you postponed a vote on whether to arm volunteer school staff members such as administrative personnel and cafeteria and janitorial staff. Again, the lion's share of our time is spent talking about this measure, a measure that will not make our children safer. It's time to put this to bed and stop talking about it. The board must once and for all vote no on arming volunteer school staff. We will be here every school board meeting until that happens. We need to find common sense solutions to keep guns out of our schools and out of the hands of kids and others who wish to do harm. And we are concerned for the safety of our children and the faculty and staff in our schools. We want to work together on common sense solutions that will make a difference now and long-term in this community. Make no mistake, we are invested in this problem and aren't going anywhere. This is a marathon, not a sprint.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adrian Trent, Vanessa Skipper, and Catherine Delaney.
Hello, I'm Adrian Trent. I'm legal counsel for the grievant in agenda item number 31. My client was harassed and discriminated against by by her direct supervisor regarding characteristics that are protected by the Brevard County Schools Harassment and Discrimination Policy 3362. My client was assured through text, emails, and verbal communications that my client's performance was well received by administration, teachers, students, and families, yet the harassment and discrimination towards my client was overshadowed my client's work at the Brevard County Schools. Details of the harassment and discrimination are included in your confidential packet, and thus it would not be appropriate to discuss those in detail in this venue, so we are asking for that the school board take up this item and consider the grievance in another venue so my client can address her concerns with the board. Thank you.
Vanessa Skipper and Catherine Delaney.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Blackburn, Vanessa Skipper, English teacher at Cocoa High School, Vice President of the Brevard Federation of Teachers. Recently, we requested that our members give us some ideas about what they would like to see in the superintendent search, and if they could provide a job description, what would it look like? So I paired through about 102 responses and came up with this. 1, someone who will continue the open door policy with the leadership of BFT. We may not always agree, but communication is key. 2, someone who has spent their years in Brevard and is part of the Brevard community. We want someone with roots and commitment to our community and someone who isn't going to retire in a few years. 3, someone who has taught and been in our schools. It was reiterated over and over that solid teaching experience was a must. 4, someone who makes teachers a priority and who understands that decent pay is imperative to retaining excellent teachers. Florida ranks 45th in teacher pay according to U.S. Census data, and we are on the track to reach 50th. 5, someone who recognizes that uninterrupted planning time is crucial to the planning of engaging lessons and for providing instructive and corrective timely feedback on student work. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that secondary teachers still would like a return to teaching 5 of 7. 6, someone who understands the rationale behind the class size amendment and why it is important to keep class sizes small to benefit the student. 7, someone who can understand that the budget allocated by the state is inadequate for running schools and that adequate school funding is a constitutional responsibility of the state government. If anyone was wondering, Florida is 41st in per pupil spending and 50th in per capita spending. 8, someone who will be willing to address significant discipline issues without simply putting a Band-Aid on a problem. Students deserve to learn in a positive environment. We need discipline that works to protect the integrity of the school environment and not the aggressors and bullies. School safety is important. Children should not be allowed to run our schools and bully teachers. 9, someone who won't chase the new fad or idea, but will use Tier 3 based research to make decisions for our schools. And 10, finally, someone who knows when to tell our legislators that is enough and they are not doing their constitutional job to adequately fund our public schools. Thank you.
And Catherine Delaney.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry I'm a little bit nervous. Public speaking isn't really one of my things. I'm here to talk to you as a parent who I'm at my wit's end here. I have contacted a couple of you about some sexual harassment that's gone on in the elementary school age kids in this county. And personally, my daughter, something happened to her at school, and I was practically told boys will be boys. And I am, as someone who's dealt with these issues before in the past, I'm a graduate of Rockledge High School, so, I'm from this county. this is so very personal to me, and I feel that this needs to be a discussion. And even though they're elementary school age kids, kids are getting pregnant younger and younger nowadays. Kids are, engaging in relationships younger and younger nowadays. These kids, they're getting crushes, they're, all this stuff. And just because they're elementary school age children doesn't mean that they're not, that inappropriate touching should just be swept away. Because it is something that happens over time. People don't just start, sexually assaulting people. It starts somewhere, and it starts, at an early age where little things here and there are just, oh, boys will be boys, or, oh, it's just innocent, she didn't mean to touch him there, and there needs to be some kind of education across the board in our schools that make it completely clear exactly what sexual assault and sexual harassment is, exactly what private parts are, about how, I was told by a sheriff, a major, who's in this building today, that butts are not private parts. And I'm sorry, but I've been teaching my children that, good touch, bad touch, and I'm sure most of these other people in here have done the same. I'm sure if any of you have children, you've done the same. And I am here today to plead with you, to join with me so that we can come together and create an education and clear definitions, clear consequences, clear things so that our children are protected in school. And that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Jane? Ma'am, if you could, Ms. Klein is right behind you in a white coat. If you can please get with her and trade some information, and we'll get that discussion going. Thank you very much for sharing. And Dr. Thetti, I knew would be right behind her. Do any board members want to make any comments? Yes, ma'am?
I would just like to thank Mr. Bennett for his positive comments this evening, and also to Mr. Roach, who brought us some positive feedback. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. All right, stand by. The board wishes to thank this evening's speakers. Your willingness to speak to the board is greatly appreciated. That moves us into the consent agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
Mr. Craig and members of the board, there are 18 agenda items under this category, one with prior information.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Does any board member wish to pull any item? You have to.
I'd like to pull F27.
Mr. Susan, F27. Any other?
F16.
F16, Mr. Ziegler. Anything else? Thank you. Pam, would you please pull item F16 by Mr. Ziegler and F27 by Mr. Susan for discussion? And I will entertain a motion to accept the consent items with the exception of the items that were just pulled for discussion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Ziegler, seconded by Ms. Belford. Is there any discussion? Can we vote electronic? Oh, we can. Look at that. Please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Mr. Ziegler, item F16 is your motion.
Move to approve administrative and professional reappointments. Second.
Moved by Mr. Ziegler, seconded by Mr. Susan. And Mr. Ziegler, your discussion.
Thank you. This is, I'm going to be bringing the same point I brought last time. I'm going to be voting against this, but want everybody on this list to know that I have no issue with anybody being reappointed right now. However, this is the category that, once approved, will solidify non-renewals. and I have an issue with one specific non-renewal, which we spoke about before, where a administrator is not being reappointed based on a decision they made as a parent in a home. And I really have an issue with us going down that road. I'll be honest, I spoke to Brevard Association of School Administrators about it. They're in support of this person, and they have a problem with it. I've spoken to to BFT about it, and actually they've been silent on it. So I guess since it's not a teacher, they're not concerned about how employees are treated. But I have a real problem with this. I think it's a slippery slope. Mrs. Envil, I asked you last time if we had a policy that allows us to do this, and you appropriately said no, and if there's any statute that allows us to judge an employee based on parental decisions in the home, and you said no. I'm curious, Mrs. Envil, does this set us up for any liability to make a decision of this nature? Are we within our right to judge an employee based on a parental decision on their home, make an employment decision based on that?
So the board and the district can make those employment decisions based on the circumstance of each individual case.
Okay, I find it hard to believe that we can do that, but I'm going to be voting no on this, basically as a protest to support employees, that I feel they need to be judged on their actions in our environment and maybe out in the community, but not parental decisions. I have a real problem with that. It'd be nice if the board would support that issue too, so we can send a message. Unfortunately, this is not an issue that comes before the board. This is not an agenda item that's going to come up for vote because it's not a termination, and I know no other way to make a public stance on it other than to pick on the category for which this person is non-renewed under. And so my vote to non-renew is in support of this employee who should not be non-renewed based on a parental action in their home, and that should scare every employee in this district, because to say it's unethical misconduct when we don't have a policy or statute or guideline or definition on what that means leaves the door wide open to any interpretation of unethical misconduct. That scares me to death. Thank you.
Any other comments? Dr. Blackburn?
Does the board care to hear the details and/or my rationale for the non-reappointment?
Was the board's desire? Would you like to?
That is not the topic of this motion. If you want to discuss it, that's fine. I'm just making the point. The board, I think, is aware, although I don't think they've seen the investigative report.
I would say it, and Ms. Enval, I'll defer to your parliamentary interpretation, but I would say that because this is an approval of this list and does not include the individual, that we would put that as part of the board discussion points at the end, if the board so wants to hear Dr. Blackburn say it, but I don't think it has any relevance to actually
You're
this.
correct.
Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Just as we're processing and for moving this to discussion and not to slow things down, my only concern would be that occasionally, sometimes there's a reason not to discuss something publicly.
Correct.
And so if the explanation of the recommendation for this particular person is going to identify them publicly or put them in a bad light publicly, I would just caution the board as to asking the superintendent to go into detail on the recommendation for they're still an individual regardless. And so I just want to make sure that we keep that top of mind. And to Mr. Ziegler, while I understand your point, and I'm not saying I support or don't support on this particular issue, I do think that we have to be really careful putting things, sometimes defining things too much, because certainly there are some things that our employees could do that are a parental decision that would be horrific for us to support. I'm not saying that's the case in this one. I'm just saying if you are going to propose that we define further, I think we have to caution.
I don't disagree. In this case, I haven't spoken to a single person who agrees with this decision, or a parent who hasn't been in a similar situation. And I'm going to guess that if we got honest input from every employee in this district, we'd let half of them go. So let's go on.
Mr. Susan?
John's right. This is
No,
not.
I agree that maybe not the discussion. For me, all I would like to do is get Dr. Blackburn's explanation inside of an email or something like that that I could review and then bring up. If you wanted to have discussion, I'm okay with that.
Okay, well,
but to type that up.
we'll talk about that when we get to discussion, but this is about this item, so I appreciate that. Without any further discussion, I'll call the question. Please vote. The motion passes 4-1. Mr. Susan, F27, for your motion.
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Susan, second by Ms. Deskovich. And Mr. Susan, your discussion.
So I kind of agree with Mr. Batchelder and what he was saying earlier up there when he was speaking, in that there's two pieces to this that have me a little bit, and I wanted to kind of alleviate where I was at with it. But so in discussing with some of the higher individuals that would apply for this job, your former law enforcement and a lot of them, when we set the salary roughly between 30 and 35,000, we may not attract the best that we might be able to attract. The idea of a first-year teacher salary runs us with fringe and everything at about $50,986. The reason that that's very important is because the argument that we made originally was we were only going to use these campus monitors in the event that we didn't have SROs inside those schools, which means that we have $52,000 that, then hang on just a second. If we have $52,000 that goes to a school that there's no SRO in, and the idea is that we are using these guys to fill those positions, at least in the temporary piece. My question is why would we not pay them the first year salary which matches that piece? Does that make sense to you?
Ms. Belford? Sorry, Mr.
I would remind you, Mr. Susan, that we have set aside funding for an SRO at every school. So those funds are already set aside to fund an SRO at every school. And we need those funds set aside so that as soon as those SROs become available, we can put them into those positions.
Right.
So that funding is there. If you're asking us to increase the salary of the school safety and security specialist to that same level, then we're going to have some in-depth discussion on what that looks like on a bigger scale.
So here's where I was getting at with it is that we've got indication from our municipalities that they will not be able to fill specific positions all through next year. Right? So we may set aside that $1.7 extra million or whatever it is that we have set aside for it, but we are not going to fill those positions. In the event that these campus monitors were in there, I didn't know if the board looks like you guys are in favor of the current salary and this isn't an issue. But I guess where I was going with this is that I almost agree that we may need to bring that up a couple of $1,000s in order to attract a better candidate. That's where I guess I was going with this.
Ms. Deskovich?
The other issue is the funds from the state are for SROs only, and so we can't take the money, although we're adding some to what they've given us, we can't use those funds for this. It's my opinion that we should start with this salary. If we can't fill the jobs, then I think we have to reconsider, but it's my 2 cents.
So we are using the entire amount that we have currently from the state, the extra $1.7 million that we have that we've allocated from our own resources that we're cutting into budgets for is the money that we may not be using. So what I'm getting at is that we are cutting budgets currently and going into that budget piece, and we are not going to be filling those positions. That's not money from the state, that's our own money. So in the event that that's happening, I would like to think about possibly raising this to attract in the event that we don't get the best candidates. Does that make sense to you? Okay. And then the other thing I would like to talk about on that same topic is the fact that we have 3 levels, and I think I wanted everybody, and this is more of a point of clarification for Mr. Batchelder, I think everybody up here would agree that it is our number one concern, and Dr. Mullins and I have gone back and forth at this, and he agrees 100% that we are to fill those top-ranking positions first. Then, in the event that we didn't find those candidates, because there won't be an armed person in the school, we would go to the lower ones. Is that what I'm hearing from the board also?
Yeah, I called Dr. Mullins also, and I think I spoke to Andy about it. and they both confirmed. I didn't have to put any pressure. I
Yeah.
just said, what are we going for first? And the level 3, they said, is their ultimate goal is to have all 28 positions be a level 3.
Yeah, so the idea that we would just, have one guy that would be service over another, I wanted to rest assured that you guys are in that position for you. And that's it.
Mr. Ziegler?
Yeah, I have a few, and unfortunately, since we got this late last night, I haven't had a chance to formulate a correspondence to address this ahead of time, but there are a couple things in here that I have questions about. One of the things it says that this person will conduct preliminary, long night. I'm freezing over here, too. This thing's been running all night. I'm blowing, man, I get cold easy for some reason. Conducts preliminary inquiries into violations of school board policies. I mean, that sounds like somebody's going to do investigations. I don't think that this person would be doing investigations as opposed to flagging and bringing the attention of security issues. So I was a little taken back by that they would do inquiries. I'm hoping that doesn't mean investigations. I'm not clear on where this person is going to fall who they're going to be supervised by, but we do know and we do understand that they're going to have to take direction and work very tightly with the SRO. I don't see that clarified in here so that this person knows that they're going to be a employee of the district and have a supervisor at the district, yet they're going to have to take direction from an SRO and work with them. It's kind of like a dual supervisor type position. I don't know if we need to clarify that before the person is hired. It also says here that this person is going to be responsible for a variety of things directed by security, and it says operates metal detectors. I suspect metal detectors is a conversation for hardening our facilities down the road, but my understanding of somebody that of utilizing a metal detector in an appropriate manner is having it manned all the time, which I don't see, not as somebody occasionally taking tabs on it, so I don't see how you could tie this person to a metal detector and do all their other jobs. So while maybe they should have that knowledge, I can't imagine sticking them on that duty, because then you don't have the perimeter search and the door checks and all of that other kind of stuff that goes on. And also job-related knowledge of formal law enforcement privileges, principles, et cetera. Private security training. I don't think that, I would like to know that somebody has significant background for this position, and I don't think that a private security training is adequate background. That is on the job-related. I think that should be removed. The other thing is I understand the logic in this. It says that they also have the ability to do data mining and social media analysis. I think that's a completely separate talent from your ability to be a security person. And I could picture a lot of people, like let's say I had the background for security. I'm not a social media or data mining expert. That might prohibit me from being able to act in that position. I don't see that that's a requirement of the job. If they have that capability, great. I'm just hoping these aren't minimum requirements, because there are some things in here I just don't think fit. So I just wanted to point out a few things in here that I think are a concern or need some better clarification. The challenge is, of course, if we send this back for revision, it delays us posting for the position. So based on those comments, I would like somebody to, maybe it needs to be Dr. Mullins, look at those items, or maybe Major Walters, and decide if they are restrictions or if they should be adjusted. But I don't want to hold this up because it doesn't need to move forward, but I wanted to voice my concerns.
Anyone have any? Ms. Belford, go ahead.
I understand where you're coming from on it, Mr. Ziegler, and it makes perfect sense. The only thing I would point out is that the qualifications are listed completely separate from the areas that you're referencing with regard to knowledge, skills, training, and abilities. So I don't think those are intended to be requirements. I think those are things that may need to be considered. And on the metal detector, I think that also, I mean, we don't currently have metal detectors, so it's not an issue. But I think the thought process there was down the road, if we put in metal detectors, somebody's gonna have to be there. And so in the interim, it may be that individual that, until we can, get all of the right people in place to address that. But there again, I did not interpret that as a requirement.
And the other thing I wanted to bring to the board's attention, I was contacted by a city councilman in Palm Bay who wants to have a discussion at the city level about funding metal detectors in all their schools. And I said that we appreciate the partnership with any of the municipalities and those efforts, but we would have to look into the logistics of how they were manned and doesn't need a full-time person and who's going to pay for that person. And I didn't want them to put us in a position that we couldn't make that happen, but we need to talk to them about that. If a city is interested in helping us elevate the level of security, they need to speak to us and our specialists, figure out how to make it work. And that's all I had. I just want to voice some concerns on a few things.
Anybody have questions? The only thing I'll just kind of circling back with you there, Mr. Ziegler. Ms. Belford kind of stated it, but just from a Department of Labor perspective of how job descriptions work, the qualifications are there because that's what they have to apply. The knowledge, skills, training, and all those things are your ability to screen, right? So you get multiple, you get 70 people apply, right? You then can start, because you have put in the skill sets that are required, or the skill sets that are desired, you now can utilize those as a screen to narrow it down to the people that you want. But if you don't put that in there, then you can't eliminate people for not having that skills, that extra skill set, if that makes sense. So you give yourself the flexibility in the hiring process to find the people that many board members up here have already said they're looking for, that high level of knowledge and that type of thing. So that's kind of how that, and then, yeah, the metal detectors, and just so that everybody knows, this document was not created inside of just this building. It was vetted and was a collaborative effort with the Sheriff's Department and their HR department. And so utilizing all the wording that they need to make sure that as these people come in for their training, it's what they're are looking for as well. So I think that's an important point. Is there anything else to add? With that, call the question. Please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Does anybody need a break? Hearing none. What's that?
Let's knock it out.
Then we will move on to the action agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
We have 4 items, and the first is G29 on department school-initiated agreements.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Deskovich. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
Even faster than that one.
There we go.
There it is.
Motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn.
Next is item G30 on purchasing solicitations.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Belford. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
You liked your bow tie.
No, done talking, it goes away. Either that or I ate it.
Yeah.
Motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn.
Item G31 is on an employee grievance.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Belford. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Ziegler.
I would just like clarification that as to whether or not the grievance timelines were adhered to or whether they were initiated outside of the window for those to be requested. As I understand, you're requesting us to not take it up, but that would apply to me that this was done outside of the windows set by policy.
Ms. Enval?
I checked the timeline, and it is correct. Everything was filed timely in between. So now the board just needs to decide whether they want to move forward with, to allow the grievant a chance to present her case before the board, or not do so.
Okay, so if everything was done timely, according to policy, then I'm not clear. I thought that the grievance process was, we had specific timelines and procedures to follow, not whether or not we agreed with whether something happened or not. So I'm concerned about approving your recommendation to not take up the grievance if it followed policy appropriately.
Go ahead.
Dr. Blackburn?
Okay, so several things here with this particular employee grievance. One, this employee, the supervising principal, sought termination during their probationary period, which the principal has every right to do. And as an aside, I will tell you that I like to think this particular superintendent has pretty high expectations for all of our principals, and I happen to know that they have zero opportunity to meet or exceed those expectations without great work product from assistant principals. So during the probationary period, the principal sought to terminate during that probationary period. At that time, the employee requested the opportunity in writing, in this packet, to resign, and was given the opportunity to resign. After that process was when these complaints came in. It was investigated thoroughly at levels of the organization. It was reviewed. I met with the employee. I found that the complaints were not founded, and so I recommend that we allow the termination to go through for those reasons. One, under the probationary period, it's our opportunity to do that with an administrator. And two, the allegations around the complaint were unfounded.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Any other discussion? Mr. Ziegler?
And my concern is not founded or unfounded. My concern is adherence to policy. And I guess where my confusion is if there's a resignation, somebody can still come back later after the fact and file a grievance after a resignation? Is that, policy allows that?
Under our policy, we have a 5-step grievance process. So the grievance process has been followed, and we're now at step 5, where she can go to the board.
And but once, upon resignation, they're a non-employee.
Right.
So a non-employee can, then our policy applies to a non-employee to grieve? It just doesn't, something's not connecting with me here. Because if we're following policy, I think we need to stick to policy. I just don't see where that applies to a non-employee. But you're telling me it does.
It does, because there's 2 separate issues, if you will. There's a resignation, the probationary term, as we call it, but it's really, under the statutes, it's called probationary dismissal. But there's a probationary term, which the employee resigned, and then there's also the grievance process for anti-harassment and anti-discrimination. And so that process applies because those allegations have been raised.
If I could also, I'll leave the legal stuff to those of us who went to law school. I didn't. But from a practical standpoint, while as superintendent I support a principal's opportunity to remove a probationary employee, if at any time that employee alleges that there was something unfair or inappropriate that happens, I think from a practical standpoint, we do owe it to our employees to look into those matters, which is what staff and I did, and those matters were unfounded.
Any more questions?
No, I just...
Any other board member have a comment? Ms. Belford?
You mentioned, and I think I understand what your thought pattern is on the conflict between an employee following the policy or not. So our anti-harassment policy or anti-discrimination policy actually applies to, and you don't have to be an employee.
Correct. It can be a vendor.
You can be a
That's
community
true.
member that files a complaint for discrimination or harassment. So that's, I think that's why it has gone to the point that it's gone to. As opposed to just looking at the resignation and saying, we don't need to go any further. Does that make sense?
I understand, but then I don't believe it would be a grievance if it's a community member. Is it then it's still, is they follow a grievance pattern? Then it's a legal issue, isn't it? I just want to make sure that we're not, that we're following policy and not violating what we say we should or shouldn't do. And that's all my quandary is right now. I know it seems like a suspicious after the fact type thing, but I'm disconnecting on application of policy.
So if you read it's
3362.
3362, and if you scroll down to the bottom of it, it actually states specifically in there, it addresses what you're talking about. It says the goal of the informal complaint procedure is to stop inappropriate behavior, provided as a less formal option, and then there is a formal complaint option, but it clearly says in the formal complaint option that this is not intended to, formal complaint process is not intended to interfere with the rights of an employee, other member of the school district, community, or third party to pursue a complaint of unlawful harassment with the United States Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, Florida Civil Rights Commission, or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So it's not in lieu of, like, they could still file with any of those organizations if they feel that the formal complaint process didn't achieve their goal.
Agreed.
Do we need more? You sound like you're still questioning. I just want to make sure if there's additional policy work that we need to do, that we are aware of that and have the opportunity to bring it back at a later time for discussion.
I'll re-scrutinize the policy to see if I feel it applies, but right now we can go ahead and move forward.
Okay, is there any other discussion? To remind everybody, the vote of aye would be to approve the superintendent's recommendation to uphold his decision to not take up the grievance. A vote of nay would be to take up the grievance, and that would mean setting another meeting no later than 30 days from now. With that being outlined, please vote. Motion passes 4-1. Dr. Blackburn.
The last item is G32 on the 2018 Educational Plant Survey.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, again seconded by Ms. Belford. Is there any discussion?
No, sir.
Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes 5-0. We are now at the information agenda, which includes items for board review and may be brought back for action. Wait, did I miss one? I missed one. No, that's not true. And may be brought back for action at a subsequent meeting. No action will be taken on these items tonight. Dr. Blackburn.
There is one item under the information category.
Does any member wish to discuss this item?
No, sir.
Hearing none, we are now at the board member reports and discussion points section. We have two discussion points on our agenda before we get to board reports. Mr. Ziegler, you asked for a discussion point on security emergency application.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. I just brought it up just to, we had to understand, now, I believe you all understand, but, you know, I hear constantly out there that everything's focusing on one form of security and not the other, and that why doesn't the board talk about this and talk about that? And we do talk about these things. But this is one that I wanted to just let you know about, and that I'm in support of it. I'm sure it's going to be brought forth as a recommendation that you all support. It's not terribly expensive. But one of the questions that we've asked is, in the event of an active shooter situation, what can we do to minimize the time to stop it? And of course, I also asked the public many times, you know, we're still going to, and said, nobody's told us we're not responsible for stopping it as soon as possible. I was been impressed by this specific application. Apparently, it's being used in Seminole County, and it's designed as a method to be able to signal at the first hint of a problem and notify everybody in the building, to notify the administration, notify security, notify the police department, notify the sheriff's department, everybody, all at once. And then they lock on to video and audio, and apparently even through the phone that's being used to trigger this. It sounds like a great idea, an inexpensive solution to practical security. And the estimate, I just want to tell you, I found the estimate for Brevard County is about $150,000. I think that's an annual subscription price or something of that nature. And in the scheme of things and in the scheme of hardening facilities, I just think that's pretty reasonable. If you all, I sent you all the links, hopefully you've all looked at it. It's a very interesting proposition. And I understand that our security people are taking a deep look at it, partially looked at it, and going to take a deeper look at it. But I wanted to bring it to your attention. I think it's an awesome idea.
Mr. Susan?
Yeah, so when he first contacted all of us about a year ago when they won the RFP for Seminole County, and I looked at it, and I will tell you that if this is part of our security plan where we need to fit something in there as a teacher, and if you look at all of the different times that this has happened in some of the other instances recently, that minimizing that time and that communication piece is huge. And this fits that. So it's a great piece, and I look forward to seeing it. The only thing that I sent the email about was it's the hardware piece, the initial hardware piece that gets kind of costly, and I think that's included in the $150,000. Something to look at. And can we use capital for that? We can, can't we, for the hardware piece of that?
Yeah, we could actually, I think it even falls under our half-cent sales tax because it's security and it's technology.
Yeah.
And also software is a capital expense. So, yeah, there are a lot of different ways that we can take care of that.
Yep.
And just for everyone, I think Major Walters was up in Seminole County looking at that, or is going to, I believe. Anyway, I know he's got it on his plate, and everybody, yes.
One other follow-up on that, because this is a communication piece. Couple challenges. I don't know if we've discussed this before, but I wanted to throw this out. I believe that security is aware of it, but I don't know that we've actually gone and actually analyzed every one of our facilities. I know, and I know this because when we built Heritage High School, there was a strong concern from emergency services that their 800 megahertz radios would not work in that school. And we were stumbling our toes on trying to solve that problem by putting in repeaters inside the facility, and it was all dragged on because of a miscommunication on being able to run low voltage cable, which is crazy. But anyways, so to that point, I mean, we still have issues with schools that have poor cellular reception. We experience it all the time. We're constantly traveling around in our schools. And there are schools also that have 800 megahertz in abilities, which all of our emergency services carry 800 megahertz. I just want to make sure that is being analyzed. The other thing is and I suggested this to our IT when I believe we're going out on a cellular bid sometime soon. There are devices that can be put in a school that help amplify a cellular signal. There are devices that you can put multiple different types of frequency amplification in, so it can do your cell, it can do your 800 megahertz. And I just want to make sure that there's a connection between security and IT when we start looking at these things to solve those problems. Because if we have the forethought when we're, say, contracting for cellular services and say, yeah, we'd like you to make our cell work better in our facilities, but don't just be selfish and put in a device that, say, only works for Verizon or AT&T or Sprint. Put in a device that we can put an 800 megahertz repeater in. I think that goes a long way to helping secure our schools, because communication, as we all know, is very critical. And I haven't heard much of any conversation on that topic about the deficiencies in our buildings. It needs to be addressed. So, and I know I spoke to some of the chiefs who've expressed those concerns, and I said, well, do you know what facilities we have problems with? And they go, yeah. I said, well, have you told anybody? And they said, well, no. I said, well, please tell us where we have problems.
Ms. Belford?
I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, and Major Walters, perhaps you are already on top of this issue with the team that you have evaluating it, but couple of considerations, kind of from a legal liability, HR standpoint requirement for our employees. Probably the majority of our employees have cell phones and would be able to download the app, but what if we have employees that don't have cell phones? Does that become something that we need to provide because that is our means of emergency communication? And then for those employees that are utilizing their personal cell phones, if they work in the building when we resolve that issue, is there an additional cost? So is it going to cost them any data? Is it going to drain batteries faster? I just want to make sure that we consider all of those options as well, especially if we're going to use it as a primary means of communication in emergency. I just want to make sure that we've looked at all of the impact to employees across the board. Major Walters, please.
Good point.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent.
Okay.
Any other discussion on that issue? Excellent. I'm sure, as has been advertised already, we do have a Phase 2 security debrief or workshop coming up in early July that a lot of these issues I know will be addressed, some of which we'll be able to do in public and some we won't. The next thing is what I asked to put on there. It's kind of overcome by events, as we had our discussion at the last workshop for the public's purview or further information. I'll just quickly summarize. We continue to work on a job advertisement for the soon-to-be open superintendent position. That will be released through local methods. Ms. Deskovich, myself, Ms. Enval are working on that, and we will get that pushed out for a window that's yet to be determined. Collect those applications and looking forward for the public's knowledge. The board is very cohesive in their agreement that the person or that we're looking for is someone that can continue Dr. Blackburn's well-built strategic plan and vision that continues to work well with the community and communicate with them as well. So we know we have a tight timeline, and we are going to continue to push very, very hard, nearly daily, to get the timeline on track, and that timeline should be finalized in the next 48 hours or so. So we look forward to having that out. Does anyone have any board member reports? Mr. Susan, you took a breath.
Just a quick question. We officially have accepted Dr. Blackburn's resignation so that we can start the process of this, correct? Is that?
It does not need to be on the agenda. It is a contract. We can approve that at any time going forward. I think we want to make sure we have some legal things tied up with that, which is why it's not on there today, but we can do that at any time. We know he's leaving.
Okay. It's not that, I just didn't know if
Any
you
other
held us up for the other
board
stuff.
member reports? Is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.